Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching the blue glow of hyperspace fade away. The stars appeared as tiny dots against the black canvas of space. His ship had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Kepler 442b, a mining colony that humans had built 3 years ago. "Sir, we are receiving the distress signal again," said Communications Officer Pete Harris from his station. The young man's face looked worried. "It's the same automated message on repeat. Colony 7 requesting immediate assistance." Jake nodded and walked closer to the main view screen. Colony 7 was home to 50,000 people. Men, women, and children who had left Earth to start new lives on this distant world. They mined rare metals that were needed for building starships and other advanced technology. "Take us in closer, Lieutenant Brown," Jake ordered his pilot. The ship moved forward through space toward the planet below. From this distance, Kepler 442b looked like a green and brown marble with white clouds swirling around it. Dr. Lisa Martinez stood up from her science station. She was a xenobiologist who studied alien life forms and technology. Her dark eyes showed concern as she looked at her instruments. "Captain, I'm not detecting any life signs from the main settlement." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. 50,000 people should show up clearly on their sensors. "Are you sure, Doctor?" "Running another scan now," Lisa replied, her fingers moving quickly over her control panel. "I'm picking up the colony buildings and the mining equipment, but no human life signs at all." Security Chief Ryan Powell stepped forward. He was a tall man with gray hair who had served in Earth's military for 20 years before joining the exploration fleet. "Captain, we should be careful. This could be a trap." Jake understood Ryan's concern, but they had a duty to help other humans in space. "Take us into orbit around the planet. Launch a probe to get a closer look at the settlement." The probe shot away from their ship like a metal arrow. It would reach the surface in 10 minutes and send back detailed pictures of what happened to Colony 7. Jake watched the main screen as they waited. "Sir, I'm getting something strange," Pete said from his communication station. "There are no active communication arrays on the surface. All the broadcasting equipment appears to be destroyed." Lisa looked up from her science station again. "The probe is sending back data now. Captain, you need to see this." The main screen changed to show images from the probe. What they saw made everyone on the bridge go silent. The colony's main city was completely destroyed. Buildings were turned into piles of rubble and twisted metal. The mining facilities were blown apart. Vehicles were scattered around like broken toys. "My God," whispered Navigator Helen Carter. She was a young woman who had never seen destruction like this before. Jake stared at the screen. "Dr. Martinez, what kind of weapon could do this kind of damage?" Lisa was already analyzing the data from the probe. The burn patterns and the type of destruction suggest high-energy plasma weapons. Very advanced ones. These weren't human weapons, Captain. Ryan crossed his arms. Pirates don't have this kind of firepower. This looks like military action. The probe continued sending back pictures as it flew over the ruined settlement. They could see that every building had been deliberately targeted and destroyed. There were no survivors anywhere. "Take us down to the surface," Jake decided. "We need to investigate this properly. Ryan, get a security team ready." "Sir, is that wise?" Pete asked. Whoever did this might still be around. Jake looked at his young communications officer. 50,000 people are dead down there, Pete. We need to find out what happened and who did it. The Horizon landed near what used to be the colonies. Main landing pad. Jake, Ryan, Lisa, and 4 security officers took a shuttle down to the surface. The air was breathable, but it smelled of smoke and burned metal. They walked through the destroyed streets in silence. Houses where families had lived were now just empty shells. The school where children had learned was a pile of broken concrete. The hospital where people had been treated was completely gone. "Captain, over here," called Ryan from near the remains of the colony's administration building. He was kneeling next to a piece of damaged equipment. Lisa examined the equipment with her scanner. "This is a communication terminal. It looks like someone was trying to send a message when the attack happened. Can you recover any data from it?" Jake asked. Lisa worked on the damaged terminal for several minutes. Finally, she found something. "I've got a partial recording. It's the colony administrator, a man named Bob Fletcher." The recording was broken and full of static, but they could hear Fletcher's desperate voice. "This is Colony 7 calling for help. We are under attack by unknown ships. They demanded we leave our homes immediately. When we refused, they opened fire. We have families here. Children, please send help. They're coming back for another pass. I don't think we can hold out much longer." The recording cut off there. Jake felt anger building inside him. These were innocent people who had been murdered for refusing to abandon their homes. "Sir, I'm detecting energy residue from the weapons that were used here," Lisa said, scanning the ground around them. "The signature matches Vorthic Empire technology." Jake knew about the Vorthics. They were one of the most powerful alien civilizations in the galaxy. Their empire controlled hundreds of star systems, and they had a massive military fleet. But humans had always maintained peaceful relations with them. Why would the Vorthics attack a human colony? Helen asked over the communication link from the ship. Ryan kicked at a piece of rubble. "Maybe they decided we're expanding too fast into space. Maybe they want to slow us down." They continued searching through the ruins for 3 more hours, but found no survivors. Every person in Colony 7 was dead. The Vorthics had been thorough in their destruction. Back on the ship, Jake sent a detailed report to Admiral Patricia Stone at Earth Command. He included all the evidence they had found and Lisa's analysis of the weapon signatures. "Set course for Earth, maximum speed," Jake ordered. "The Admiral needs to see this evidence as soon as possible." As the Horizon jumped back into hyperspace, Jake stared out at the stars. 50,000 innocent people were dead, including families and children. Someone was going to pay for this massacre, but he had a feeling this was just the beginning. If the Vorthics were willing to destroy an entire human colony, what would they do next? President Daniel Hayes sat at the head of the large oval table in the Emergency Council chamber deep beneath Geneva. The room was filled with the most powerful people on Earth. Military leaders, scientists, diplomats, and government officials had all gathered within hours of receiving Captain Morrison's report about Colony 7. Admiral Patricia Stone stood at the front of the room near a large, holographic display showing the destroyed settlement. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, but her face showed the strain of the past 24 hours. She had been working without sleep since the first reports came in. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we are looking at is not an isolated incident," Admiral Stone began. Her voice was steady, but everyone could hear the anger underneath. "In the past month, we have lost 4 human colonies to similar attacks. Over 200,000 civilians are dead." The room went completely silent. Defense Secretary Carl Johnson leaned forward in his chair. "Admiral, are you certain these attacks were carried out by the Vorthic Empire?" "Yes, sir," Admiral Stone replied. "Our scientists have analyzed weapon residue from all 4 attack sites. The energy signatures are identical, and they match known Vorthic military technology. There is no doubt about who is responsible." Ambassador Claire Thompson raised her hand. She was a tall woman with silver hair who had spent 15 years working with alien governments. "I have formally protested these attacks to the Galactic Senate 3 times. The Vorthic representatives claimed that our colonies were established illegally in their territory. "That's complete nonsense," said Secretary of State Mary Wilson. "We have proper colonization permits for every single settlement. All paperwork was filed correctly with the Galactic Authority." Ambassador Thompson nodded. "I know that, and you know that. But the Vorthics are claiming that humans are expanding too quickly into space, and that we pose a threat to galactic stability. They say our colonies must be removed for the greater good." President Hayes had been listening quietly, but now he spoke up. "What is the current status of our remaining colonies?" General Kevin Brooks opened a folder in front of him. He was the head of Earth's military forces and had been planning defensive strategies all night. "We have evacuated 12 colonies that are closest to Vorthic space. Approximately 3 million people have been relocated to safer areas. However, we still have 47 colonies that could be targets. What about our military capabilities?" President Hayes asked. "Can we defend these colonies if the Vorthics attack again?" General Brooks looked uncomfortable. "Sir, the Vorthic Empire has over 50,000 warships. We have approximately 1,000 ships in our entire fleet. In a direct military confrontation, we would be destroyed." The weight of those numbers settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Earth's entire civilization could be wiped out if the Vorthics decided to launch a full-scale war. "However, General," Brooks continued, "we do have some advantages that the Vorthics don't know about. Dr. Nathan Ross has been working on a classified project that could change everything." Dr. Nathan Ross was a thin man with thick glasses who rarely spoke in meetings like this. But now he stood up and walked to the front of the room. "Project Blackout has been in development for 10 years. We have positioned over 5,000 satellites throughout human-controlled space. These satellites can disrupt faster than light communication over vast distances." "Explain how this helps us," President Hayes said. Dr. Ross adjusted his glasses. "The Vorthic Empire controls hundreds of star systems across thousands of light years. Their government and military depend completely on instant communication to coordinate their activities. If we cut off their ability to communicate, their empire becomes paralyzed." "But that still doesn't solve our military disadvantage," pointed out General Brooks. "They still have 50 ships for every one of ours." Treasury. Secretary Bob Anderson had been reviewing economic data on his tablet. Now he looked up with an interesting expression on his face. "Maybe we don't need to fight them militarily. Earth controls something that might be even more powerful than warships." Everyone turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" "President," Hayes asked. "Trade routes and resources," Bob Anderson replied. "Earth controls 17 of the most important faster-than-light travel routes in this part of the galaxy. Any ship that wants to travel quickly between major star systems has to pass through space that we control." Trade Minister Alex Carter nodded enthusiastically. "Bob is right. We also produce 38% of all refined quantum crystals in the galaxy. Every single starship needs quantum crystals to power their faster-than-light engines. Without them, interstellar travel becomes impossible." "Are you suggesting an economic embargo?" Ambassador Thompson asked. "I'm suggesting we shut down galactic civilization until the Vorthics agree to our terms," Alex Carter replied. "No trade routes, no quantum crystals, no faster-than-light communication. We make the entire galaxy choose between us and them." Secretary of Defense Carl Johnson shook his head. "That's incredibly risky. What if other alien governments side with the Vorthics instead of us?" "Then we're no worse off than we are now," President Hayes said quietly. "At least this way we have a chance to survive without fighting a war we cannot win." Dr. Ross spoke. "Up again. There's something else. The Vorthics and most other alien civilizations have become completely dependent on the technologies and resources that flow through galactic trade networks. Humans learned to be self-sufficient during our early space colonization efforts. We can survive being cut off from galactic trade much better than they can. Admiral Stone was studying the holographic display showing Vorthic territory. If we're going to do this, we need to act quickly. Intelligence reports suggest the Vorthics are preparing for more attacks on our colonies. At that moment, Communications Director Tim Brown rushed into the room with a tablet in his hand. His face was pale. "Mr. President, we just received an emergency transmission from the passenger ship New Hope. They were carrying 30,000 civilians evacuated from the frontier colonies. The Vorthics intercepted them and destroyed the ship. There were no survivors." The room erupted in angry voices. President Hayes stood up and raised his hand for silence. When the room was quiet, he spoke in a voice that was hard as steel. 30,000 innocent people, including children and refugees who are already fleeing from their destroyed homes. The Vorthics have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. He looked around the room at each person. "We will not negotiate with murderers. We will not bow down to bullies. As of this moment, Earth is imposing a complete economic embargo against the Vorthic Empire and any civilization that continues to trade with them." The decision that would reshape the galaxy had been made. The announcement from Earth spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours, every alien government, trading company, and space station had received the same message. President Hayes had spoken directly to the galaxy, his words translated into hundreds of alien languages. Trade Minister Alex Carter stood in the main communications center at Geneva headquarters, watching as responses poured in from across known space. His team of translators and diplomatic analysts worked frantically to process the flood of incoming messages. "Sir, we're getting responses from the Andromedan Republic," said his assistant, Jenny Mills. "They want to know if Earth is serious about shutting down the Centauri trade route." Alex nodded grimly. "Tell them we are completely serious. Any ship that has traded with Vorthic worlds in the past 6 months will be turned away from all human-controlled space." On the other side of the galaxy, Vorthic Prime Minister Carthul received Earth's ultimatum in his palace on the capital world. He was a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms, wearing the ceremonial robes of his office. Around him stood his military advisors and government ministers. "This is ridiculous," Carthul said, crushing the message tablet in one of his hands. "These humans think they can threaten the mighty Vorthic Empire. We control 400 star systems. They control barely 50. War Commander Vex Talar stepped forward. He was the leader of the Vorthic military and had personally ordered the attacks on the human colonies. "Prime Minister, should we ignore this threat and continue with our expansion plans?" "Of course," Carthul replied. "The other civilizations will never side with these upstart humans over us. We are too powerful and too important to galactic trade. This embargo will collapse within days." But Carthul was wrong about how the galaxy would react. The first sign of trouble came from Captain Tony Rodriguez of the merchant vessel New Angeles. His ship carried luxury goods from Earth to alien worlds, and he had been doing business with Vorthic traders for years. Tony's ship approached the Zalani Consortium space station near the edge of human territory. This was one of the busiest trading posts in the galaxy, where ships from dozens of different civilizations came to buy and sell goods. New Angeles requesting permission to dock, Tony said into his communication system. The response came back immediately from Station Commander Lisa Park. "New Angeles, please transmit your recent trading records for inspection." Tony sent over his ship's log showing everywhere he had been in the past 6 months. 5 minutes later, Lisa's voice came back over the communication system, but now she sounded apologetic. "New Angeles, I'm sorry, but we cannot allow you to dock. Your records show you traded with 3 Vorthic worlds in the past month. Under Earth's new embargo rules, you are banned from human-controlled space. Tony stared at his communication panel in shock. Commander Park, I've been trading through this station for 8 years. You know me personally. I know Tony, and I'm truly sorry. But orders are orders. You'll need to leave human space immediately. Similar scenes were happening at dozens of space stations and trade routes throughout human territory. The Corellian merchant ship Bright Star was turned away from the Luna City trading post. The Andromedan freighter Golden Wing was refused docking privileges at the Mars orbital station. Within 24 hours, the economic impact began to spread. The Zelani Consortium found themselves in serious trouble. Their entire fleet of transport ships depended on quantum crystals refined in human facilities. Without these crystals, their ships could not travel faster than light. Zelani Trade Director Vex Kalin sent an urgent message to his government leaders. We have enough quantum crystals in storage to keep our fleet running for 3 weeks. After that, our entire transportation network will shut down. We employ over 2 million beings across 50 star systems. This could destroy our entire civilization. Similar panic was spreading through other alien governments. The Rigelian Commerce Guild discovered that 30% of their trade routes passed through human-controlled space. The Centaurian Federation realized that their food imports from agricultural worlds would be cut off completely. Dr. Nathan Ross sat in his laboratory on Earth, monitoring the activation of Project Blackout. On his screens, he could see the locations of over 5,000 satellites that had been secretly positioned throughout space over the past decade. Begin communication disruption, he said to his team of technicians. Across Vorthic territory, the satellites activated simultaneously. They sent out powerful energy pulses that interfered with faster-than-light communication signals. Within minutes, the Vorthic Empire lost the ability to communicate instantly between their hundreds of worlds. On Vorthic Prime, Communication Minister Zex Toril rushed into Prime Minister Kar Thul's office with terrible news. Sir, we've lost contact with over half of our territory, he said, his forearms shaking with fear. Something is blocking our communication networks. Kar Thul felt the first stirring of concern. How is that possible? Our communication system is the most advanced in the galaxy. I don't know, sir. But without instant communication, we cannot coordinate government activities across our empire. Tax collection will stop. Military orders cannot be sent. Trade agreements cannot be managed. The effects of Project Blackout spread through Vorthic space like a disease. On distant worlds, local governors found themselves completely cut off from the central government. Military commanders could not receive orders from their superiors. The vast bureaucracy that held the empire together began to break down. Admiral Patricia Stone received reports from human intelligence agents throughout the galaxy. She sat in, her office reading update after update about the chaos spreading through alien civilizations. The Corellian Trade Federation has announced they are suspending all business with Vorthic worlds, reported Intelligence Director Frank Cooper. They cannot afford to lose access to human trade routes. What about the Andromedan Republic? Admiral Stone asked. They held an emergency session of their parliament. They voted to end their military cooperation agreement with the Vorthics. Apparently, they need our quantum crystals more than they need Vorthic friendship. Even some of the Vorthic Empire's oldest allies began to waver. The Draconian Alliance had been partners with the Vorthics for over 200 years, but they depended heavily on trade goods that passed through human space. Draconian Ambassador Rex Moeller sent a private message to Vorthic Prime Minister Kar Thul. Old friend, perhaps it is time to reconsider this conflict with the humans. Our economy is already suffering from the trade disruptions. But Kar Thul refused to back down. His pride would not allow him to negotiate with what he saw as an inferior species. "We will break this embargo with military force," he declared to his war council. "Prepare the fleet for a massive assault on human space." War Commander Vex Talar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Death's Edge, watching as 2,000 Vorthic warships assembled in formation around him. This was the largest military fleet the Empire had ever gathered in one place. Each ship bristled with plasma cannons and missile launchers capable of destroying entire planets. "All ships report ready for battle," announced his tactical officer. The bridge crew moved efficiently around their stations, preparing for what they believed would be an easy victory over the humans. Vex Talar studied the holographic display showing the target system. The humans had positioned their defensive fleet near Centauri, protecting one of their most important colonies. Intelligence reports suggested Admiral Patricia Stone herself was commanding the defense with only 200 human ships. 10-to-1 odds in our favor, Vex Talar said with satisfaction. These humans will learn the price of defying the Vorthic Empire. But as his fleet moved toward human space, Vex Talar began to notice problems. Without faster-than-light communication, he could not coordinate properly with his ship commanders. Orders had to be sent by light-speed radio, which took precious minutes to reach ships at the edge of his formation. "Sir, the third battle group is falling behind," reported his navigation officer. "They didn't receive the course correction order in time." Vex Talar growled in frustration. "Send runners in fast courier ships. We must maintain formation." Meanwhile, Admiral Stone watched the approaching Vorthic fleet from the bridge of her flagship, the UES Liberty. Her tactical display showed the enemy ships as red dots moving steadily toward the Centauri system. The size of the enemy force would have terrified most commanders, but Stone had a plan. "Dr. Lisa Martinez, are you getting good readings on there?" "Coordination problems?" Stone asked. The xenobiologist had been transferred to her staff as a tactical advisor after her experience at Colony 7. "Yes, Admiral," Lisa replied, studying her sensor readings. "Their formation is already breaking apart. Ships are moving at different speeds, and some are going in slightly wrong directions. Without instant communication, they cannot maintain proper battle coordination." Stone nodded. "Commander Billy Foster, are your destroyer squadrons ready?" Commander Foster was leading a group of 50 small, fast ships that would be crucial to the battle plan. "Ready and waiting, Admiral. We'll hit them, just like we discussed." The Vorthek fleet entered the Centauri system, expecting to find the human ships waiting in a defensive formation. Instead, they found empty space. Admiral Stone had positioned her forces behind one of the system's gas giant planets, hidden from enemy sensors. "Where are they?" Vex Talar demanded, staring at his tactical display. "Scan the entire system." "Sir, I'm detecting ships behind the fourth planet," his sensor operator reported. "But they're not in battle formation. They appear to be scattered across a wide area." Vex Talar was confused. Human military doctrine, like that of most civilizations, emphasized tight formations and coordinated attacks. Why would they spread their ships so far apart? "All ships move to attack the human forces behind the planet," Vex Talar ordered. But without instant communication, it took several minutes for his order to reach all 2,000 ships. Some commanders received the message quickly, others much later. The result was chaos. Part of the Vorthic fleet charged toward the gas giant at full speed. Other ships, not having received the order yet, continued on their original course. Still, others stopped completely, waiting for clarification. The perfect formation that Vex Talar had spent days organizing fell apart in minutes. "Admiral," Stone watched the enemy fleet's confusion with grim satisfaction. "Now we see the difference between our fighting styles and theirs. Commander Foster, begin the attack." Commander Foster's destroyer squadron shot out from behind the gas giant like a swarm of angry wasps. Each human ship operated independently, with its captain making quick decisions based on what they could see in front of them. This was how human naval forces had learned to fight during Earth's own world wars, when communication was often impossible. The destroyers tore into the scattered Vorthik formation, targeting ships that were isolated from their companions. Without coordination, the larger Vorthik vessels could not provide covering fire for each other. They were forced to fight as individual ships against groups of human attackers. Enemy destroyer hit and disabled, reported Foster over the communication system. Moving to next target. Dr. Martinez watched the battle from the Liberty's bridge with fascination. Admiral, their military training emphasizes following orders from Central Command. When they lose that connection, their individual ship commanders don't know how to adapt. While our captains learn to think for themselves, Stone replied. Every human ship captain in this battle has been trained to make independent decisions when communication is cut off. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Vorthiks had superior numbers and firepower, but their coordination continued to fall apart as the fighting intensified. Ships fired on positions where they thought human vessels were located, only to discover they were shooting at empty space because the humans had already moved. Commander Foster's destroyers used hit-and-run tactics, appearing suddenly to attack, isolated enemy ships, and then disappearing before the Vorthiks could respond effectively. The larger human cruisers and battleships engaged the enemy main force in smaller groups, always staying mobile and never allowing themselves to be surrounded. By the end of the battle, the Vorthik fleet was in complete disarray. Over 400 of their ships had been destroyed or disabled, while the humans had lost only 37 vessels. Vex Talar found himself retreating with the survivors, his perfect invasion force reduced to a scattered collection of damaged ships. "This is impossible," he said, staring at his tactical display in disbelief. "We outnumbered them 10-1. But the military defeat was only part of the Empire's problems. On Vorthik Prime, civilian protests had erupted in the capital city. Citizens waited in long lines for basic supplies that could no longer be imported from other worlds. The economic embargo was strangling the Empire's trade networks. Prime Minister Karthul received reports of growing unrest from dozens of worlds throughout his territory. Without the ability to communicate instantly with local governors, he could not coordinate responses to the various crises breaking out across his empire. "Sir, the Corellian Trade Federation has officially announced they will no longer trade with any Vorthik worlds," reported his aide. "The Andromedan Republic has followed suit. Even our allies in the Draconian Alliance are reconsidering their position." On distant Vorthik colonies, local populations began to rebel against imperial rule. They had been conquered by the Empire decades or centuries ago, but had always been kept in line by the threat of swift retaliation from the Imperial fleet. Now, with communication systems down and the military in chaos, subject species saw their chance for freedom. Karthul realized. His empire was collapsing around him, but his pride still would not allow him to surrender to the humans. Prime Minister Karthul sat alone in his private chambers on Vorthik Prime, staring out at the capital city below. Smoke rose from several districts where riots had broken out 3 days ago. His once mighty empire was crumbling faster than he had ever imagined possible. His aide, a young Vorthik named Zexkoro, entered the room carrying a tablet with the latest reports. "Sir, we have received another message from the human president requesting negotiations." Karthul's forearms trembled with rage and humiliation. "How many worlds have we lost control of this week?" 17, sir," Zexkoro replied quietly. "The subject species are declaring independence faster than our remaining forces can respond. Without communication networks, we cannot coordinate any military response A month ago, Carthul had commanded 400 star systems and billions of subjects. Now his empire was shrinking daily as conquered worlds broke away and declared their freedom. The economic embargo had destroyed trade. Networks that had taken centuries to build. What about food supplies in the capital? Carthul asked. We have enough for maybe 2 more weeks, his aide replied. The agricultural worlds that used to supply us have either rebelled or stopped shipping food because they cannot trade with the outside galaxy. Carthul closed his eyes and made the hardest decision of his life. Send a message to the human president. Tell him I am ready to discuss terms. President Daniel Hayes received Carthul's message while meeting with his cabinet in Geneva. The room fell silent as Communications Director Tim Brown read the Vorthic leader's words requesting a meeting to end the conflict. It's over, said Secretary of State Mary Wilson. The embargo worked. Not quite over, President Hayes replied. We still need to make sure this never happens again. Ambassador Thompson, I want you to handle the negotiations personally. Ambassador? Claire Thompson nodded. What are our terms, Mr. President? Complete withdrawal from all human colonies, reparations for the murdered civilians, and the surrender of all military officers involved in the massacres. They will face trial under galactic law. General Kevin Brooks leaned forward. Sir, should. We also demand military restrictions on their fleet? President Hayes thought for a moment. No. If we destroy their ability to defend themselves, other species might try to conquer them later. We're not interested in ruling an empire. We just want justice for our people and guarantee this will never happen again. The negotiations took place on the neutral world of Rigel Station, a massive space platform that served as a diplomatic meeting point for different civilizations. Ambassador Thompson sat across from Prime Minister Carthul in a small conference room with representatives from several other alien governments serving as witnesses. Carthul looked like a broken leader. His ceremonial robes were wrinkled, and his blue skin had lost its healthy color. The proud ruler who had once commanded hundreds of worlds now begged for mercy. Ambassador Thompson, I accept full responsibility for the attacks on human colonies, he said in a voice barely above a whisper. We acted without justification and killed innocent people. I am prepared to accept your terms. The families of 200,000 murdered civilians demand justice, Thompson replied firmly. War Commander Vex Talar and 12 other officers involved in planning the attacks must surrender themselves for trial. Carthul nodded sadly. They will be handed over to galactic authorities within 1 week. What about reparations? Thompson asked. We will pay whatever compensation Earth demands, Carthul replied. Though I must warn you that our economy has been severely damaged by the embargo. It may take years to pay the full amount. Thompson had expected this. We will accept payment over time, but we also want something else. The Vorthic Empire must release all conquered species and allow them to choose their own governments. This demand shocked Carthul. Ambassador, that would reduce our territory to less than 50 star systems. We would no longer be a major galactic power. You should have thought of that before you started murdering human families, Thompson replied coldly. Over the following weeks, the terms of the agreement were implemented. Captain Jake Morrison, who had discovered the massacre at Colony 7, now commanded a fleet of ships helping to resettle human refugees. The survivors from the destroyed colonies were given new homes on safer worlds. General Kevin Brooks oversaw the dismantling of Vorthic forward military bases near human space. The Empire's aggressive expansion had been permanently stopped. Meanwhile, Dr. Nathan Ross began converting his Project Blackout satellites from weapons into tools for peace. Instead of blocking communication, we can use these satellites to create a new galactic internet, Ross explained to President Hayes. Every civilization will have access to instant communication, but no single empire will control the network. The new system was called the Galactic Cooperation Network, and it was managed by representatives from dozens of different species. Earth provided the technology, but decisions about its use were made democratically. 6 months after the embargo began, Captain Tony Rodriguez piloted his merchant ship New Angeles toward the former Vorthek capital world. This was his first trading mission to Vorthek space since the conflict ended. As his ship approached the planet, Tony was amazed by what he saw. The orbital stations that had once been symbols of imperial power were now busy with ships from many different civilizations. The Vortheks were trading peacefully with species they had once conquered. New Angeles requesting permission to dock, Tony said into his communication system. Permission granted, came the reply from the traffic control center. Welcome to our world, Captain Rodriguez. We have been waiting for Earth traders to return. Tony's cargo hold was filled with quantum crystals and medical supplies that the Vortheks desperately needed. In exchange, he would take back artwork and luxury goods created by Vorthek craftsmen. It was honest trade between equals, not the tribute. Demands of a conquered people. Admiral Patricia Stone stood on the observation deck of her new flagship, watching ships from the Galactic Defense Fleet conduct training exercises. The fleet included vessels from Earth, the former Vorthek worlds, and dozens of other civilizations that had joined the new alliance. Admiral, we're receiving a priority message from the Andromedan Republic, reported her communications officer. Pirates have attacked one of their outer colonies. They're requesting assistance. Stone smiled. Tell them we're on our way. The Galactic Defense Fleet protects all member species equally. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity might be young and relatively small in number, but they controlled the technologies and trade routes that held galactic civilization together. More importantly, they had shown that justice and cooperation were stronger than military. Conquest. The Vorthek Empire had thought humans were just another weak species to be dominated and controlled. They had been completely wrong. When Earth said no more killing, the stars themselves had listened and responded. War. Commander Vex Talar now sat in a prison cell on Rigel Station, awaiting trial for his war crimes. Through his small window, he could see ships from dozens of species working together in the name of peace. The galaxy had changed forever because one species had decided that some lines should never be crossed.